Right back, right here once again. I'm Melchior Uriel, and tonight we're going to be discussing whether or not Shabbat, morning to morning, is Babylonian or not. Whether it is Babylonian. It's a serious question. You need to hop on in and let's talk about it. Well, it's one of those serious questions that we all need to ask simply because no one wants to be following the incorrect calendar or the incorrect time sequence. Because all of us know that timing is very important to our Elohim. Timing is very important to our Elohim who is basically he is exact and he loves to be exact. And he says what he means. Our Elohim does not play, right? He is merciful, but he also has judgment. And it's like this. When there are times of divine appointments or moedim, it is expected that we be on time and that we be front and center for what's going to happen. Why? Because it's supposed to be important to us. So if we are practicing Shabbat incorrectly, it then becomes a very serious matter. So then, with that being in mind, we have to ask ourselves the question, is it true? Is it true that the day begins, and I know this has been a controversy in Israel, right? Some people believe one way and think another way and vice versa. But here's the question. Do we start a day at evening, or does it start at sunset? Does it start at sunrise? Okay, which one is it? Okay, and depending upon which one it is also going to weigh into whether or not we are observing Shabbat correctly. Because if we start at the evening and say that a day is from evening to evening, then that's going to be a different outcome. If we start Shabbat in the morning when the sun rises and say, well, the day begins at sunrise and it ends at basically at the next sunrise on the next day. It is very important for us to have the right concept in mind and to understand the truth about this. Now, listen, before I go further, I just simply want to say, I don't think that this should be one of those things that separates us in Israel, okay? However, it is something of major importance, okay? Now, listen, there are many issues that are of major importance that I kind of want to dive into that I feel are potential deal breakers for unity when it comes to Israel. One is, of course, Shabbat, right? Whether the day begins at evening or if it begins when the sun rises at dawn. As well as, there's other things that we could talk about, or I should say there's other things that are equally important. Whether or not it's idolatry to believe that Yeshua ben Yosef, called Jesus by the Greeks and the Romans, that he is the Messiah or that he is God. I mean, we need to talk about these things because now more than ever, we need to stick together. We need to hold together, right? How beautiful it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. It is as the ointment or the anointing oil that was upon the head of Aharon that dripped down to his beard and to the skirts of his garment. Blessed is the unity, right, of us that stick together. So it's important for us to be unified, even now more so than ever. Now, with that being true, we need to deal with the hard questions. We do. We need to deal with the hard questions, and I feel like this is one of them. Now, there are other hard questions that I feel like we're going to have to ask and answer. Questions about a number of different things that I'm not even going to get into right now. See, I was just about to go there, and I was just about to get into something that I feel would take us down a rabbit trail, but I sidestepped that one. Okay, high fives for everyone. I'm glad that I did sidestep that one. But there are things that are of major importance for us that we're going to have to discuss. Now, for tonight, we are talking about, we're talking about whether or not the day begins at evening or if it begins at sunset, which is going to weigh into whether or not our Shabbat begins at evening or whether or not it begins at daybreak. Okay? It is important for us to, again, it's important for us to tackle this information, or I should say this subject. And with that being the case, we're going to get right into it. Now, listen, just before I do, I want to say that those of you, excuse me, those of you that are with us, we want to make sure that you can comment. You can go to either the YouTube chat or you can go to Facebook chat. And you can, of course, weigh in with us. Okay, you can definitely weigh in with us and decide whether or not you're going to, comment or do whatever you need to do. So make sure that you do. I'm going to be checking, and also in the description we have as well. We have the. I apologize, but we have the Skype link. Yes, we want to try, if we need to take a call tonight, we will definitely try to do that. If you want to call in, we'll see if that would work. If it doesn't, then we'll just have to keep it moving. So here then is the controversy. Okay, the controversy is whether or not the 24-hour day begins. If it begins with the evening being first, and so why would we think that the day begins at evening? Well, I'm glad that you asked, because then now we can go into some scriptures. Let's go to basically Genesis, right? We're going to start at Genesis 1, and we're just going to, I need you to follow along with me. We're going to be getting into a number of different scriptures. But listen, take some notes. It's important that you follow along, right? So let's go here. Genesis 1. Now, we know this as the creation epic. There are two creation stories in Genesis, in the first chapter and the second chapter. Some choose to harmonize those two, okay? If they do, then they introduce the conundrum of mythology, which brings about Lilith and Eve being the second wife and so forth and so on. Okay, but we're not going to get into that right now, excuse me. But what we are going to do is we're going to look at creation, and we're going to see, first of all, why evening would be suggested as the beginning of the day. Now, I'm just going to begin reading. In the beginning, okay, and this really should properly read that in the beginning of the cyclical time sequence. Okay, I know that may seem strange for some, but in the beginning of the week, or in the beginning of the cyclical time sequence, our Elohim created the heaven and the earth was without form and it was void. It was tohu vabohu, or tohu wabohu, right? Which is, it didn't have any purpose, or it didn't have any delineation, or even structure, if you will, attached to it. It was just simply existing as physical stuff. And darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Ruach of our Elohim moved upon the face of the waters. And verse 3 is where it becomes interactive. Our Elohim said, "Let there be or, let there be light," and there was light. Now, please understand that if there was not light, then there was darkness before. This is a very important point. And in fact, in times past, I have actually made the point that our Elohim is definitely sentimental, if you will. If you look at the Tanakh and if you go through the scriptures, you'll find out that he always marks and celebrates the sequences of the sequence of events and the way that things unfold. Okay, he actually marks them and he celebrates them, such as when the children of Israel cross over. He says, "Look, I want you to put a stone here for each of the tribes, right? And this is going to mark and be a remembrance of when you came over." He admonishes us to remember all the way that you have come, right? Even the festivals and the feasts that we have, they are days of remembrance of things that have happened. Passover, Why is Passover a feast? It's because of, if you'll allow me to say it, the sentimentality of our Elohim, who looks at everything that has happened and marks it as something that is important enough to be remembered. Keep that in mind, okay? Because when you need to answer a question as to whether or not the evening comes before, you have to include all such things as this, as I'm mentioning, including the sentimentality of our Elohim, okay? Because again, remember, the children of Israel wanted to know the acts of our Elohim. They wanted to see a sign, but Moshe wanted to know the ways of our Elohim. And so the way that he acts and the way that he responds is, if you'll allow me to say it this way, is by means of sentimentality, by means of him being sentimental, and therefore he remembers and cherishes everything that has happened, okay? And it becomes something that becomes a celebration, right? So now notice here, please, notice here, if you will, that it was dark before he created light, okay? Now notice what it says, and the earth, verse 2, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. It did not read that there was darkness and light upon the face of the deep. It said darkness was upon the face of the deep. Now we know from this, then, that the darkness did come first. All right, let's continue on. In verse number 3, and our Elohim said, let there be light. So now there is light, okay? We know that that came after the darkness. So then, looking at verse 4, and our Elohim saw that the light, that it was good, right? It was good. And our Elohim divided the light from the darkness. Now, he divided the light from the darkness, which means that there is a continual division. If you'll allow me to say it this way, there is a when it comes to scriptures, there is a continual division between the day light, called day, and the night, okay? There is a continual division in scriptures, so much to the point to where when these are mentioned in scriptures, their sequence, I should say, when their sequences are mentioned in scripture, it gives you hints and clues as to who's doing the talking and of what persuasion they might be of. Because they are separated. Day is separated from night, night is separated from day, and then of course he established the sun to rule the day that has been separated from the night, and then of course he established the moon to rule the night, okay? And as it continues here, you find out, and our Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning. See, now this is why, okay, many have said and many have believed that, hey, the day begins at evening. It begins with the darkness. Now, again, this fits the whole, memorial motif of our Elohim, or the sentimentality motif of our Elohim. It fits completely, okay? And if you notice all through the scripture, this motif will fit the actions and the ways of our Elohim. So let's continue. But this is why the evening and the morning, or I should say the darkness, is considered to be first, okay? Now, let's just continue, because some will argue in the midst of this, they will argue, well, in order for you to have evening, okay, that means that you would have had to have had light before, right? Because evening, what is evening? Evening is when you are going from light and into darkness, okay? And let me just do this real quick. I'm just going to take a minute here and let me just do one thing and see if I have not checked to see who may be on with us. Let me do this real quick. I don't know how I got rid of that. All right, but here we are. Give me just a second here. Okay, I'll go to the chat, and all right, I think we're good for the chat. So then let's just continue. So then here we have the evening and the morning, okay? Now, again, the evening is supposed. Now, our modern definition of evening is when it is light and it is going towards darkness. Now, here's where the conundrum begins to really get into high gear. The evening is thought of as being the darkness, right? Because it's when something becomes dark. But wait a minute, it was dark already. And then he created light. So did our Elohim just ignore all of the darkness? Did he ignore all of the darkness? And then once he created light, he allowed the span of day to take place, and then there was evening? Okay? So in other words, from a creation standpoint, did the day begin with the creation of light? Because it would really have to follow suit. If our Elohim has established that the day, or I should say the rising of the sun, is the beginning of a day, then his creation of light would also have to be the beginning of the day. Okay? And once he created the light, it then became evening. Okay? But then after evening, it becomes night, and then when the sun rises again, there is the next morning. But wait a minute, why would there be a problem with that level of thinking? I'll tell you why. Because here we're speaking of light, but if you notice, the sun was not created until the fourth day. Okay? The sun was created on the fourth day. Look at it here. Let's begin at verse number 14. And our Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. So wait a minute. Notice what was just read. To divide what? To divide what? To divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. Okay, now I'm going to make a point, so I need to really say this again. I'm going to need to read verse number 14 again. And our Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmaments of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so. Verse number 16, and our Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Now, with what we have just read, you understand that in the beginning, when he creates light, he did not create the sun. Otherwise, you would have to ask the question, well, if he created the sun in the beginning and then he creates the sun again, or he creates light and then he creates the sun, what are you talking about? Our Elohim, if you notice, and in fact, oh man, this gets into so much here, because we have to understand what's happening here. What's happening in Bereshit 1, in Genesis 1, is the entire process of bara. What is bara? Bara is the infilling, the making full of something. It is giving it, and now practically, it is delineating, separating, and establishing purpose and function of all that exists. Okay? That is what is happening in this entire sequence of bara that our Elohim is showing us. It is a separation, a definition, and the establishment of purpose of those things that have been created, that exist. Because you have to remember that in the minds of the ancients, if it did not have a purpose, and if it did not practically affect their existence, then they didn't consider it to exist. So you have to follow that kind of thinking as you look at the creation epic, because it is written to a people that thought that way and that understood existence that way. It had to have purpose, and it had to affect their lives, okay, in some way. It had to affect their lives then it was something that could be of consequence. All right. Other than that, then it really did not exist in the deeper sense and meaning of the word. Okay. It being physical meant nothing. It had to have purpose, and it had to affect their lives immediately. So then, looking at this, we see that, yeah, the sun and moon as we know them were actually created on the fourth day. It is the capacity for light to exist and the capacity for darkness to exist, okay, in the sense of them having a role in the world to come, this physical world that was being developed. The concept and the space of night and darkness and the concept of the space of light was what was being created in the beginning, okay? In all of its dimensions and all of its ramifications, light was being created as a phenomenon, okay? Because remember, darkness was upon the face of the deep. So then light had to be created as a phenomenon, and then the phenomenon of light is then expressed and called upon through the existence of new creations of sun and moon, okay? And then, of course, they are given their particular purposes and their particular offices, if you will. The sun to rule the day and the moon to rule the night. Let's continue. And so God made two great lights. Look at verse number 17. And our Elohim set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, okay, and to divide the light from the darkness. And our Elohim saw that the division of light and darkness was good, and that the establishment of the sun to rule the day or the daytime was good, and the moon to rule the night was also good. And notice what it reads once again. Even after this, the creation of the sun and the moon, notice what it reads, and the evening and the morning were the fourth day. The evening and the morning were the fourth day. Now, it has to be kept in mind that at this particular point, you know that we're talking about a full 24-hour period as opposed to a given day. Now, why do I mention that? I have to mention that because as we continue in scriptures, you're going to find that when day is mentioned, it is literally pointing to daylight. Okay, it's not pointing to the calendar day, but it's pointing to the day's light, which means the daytime. Okay, so you're going to find out that once you look at day and night, you will then begin to understand Shabbat day or the Sabbath day in a slightly different light. Okay, but let's continue because this is important. And so then the evening and the morning were the fourth day. So now once again, here we have the darkness coming before the light. We have the evening and the morning, okay, becoming the fourth day. And this enumeration, you'll find it all throughout Genesis, the first chapter, right? You're going to find this all throughout Genesis. But now let's dig into this subject a little bit further, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to go from the, you know how we feel about the New Testament, right? Even though it is not the word of our Elohim, there are things in it that we can look at that will tell us how the ancients thought in the first century. That is what we're going to do. We're not going to use it as the word of our Elohim, but we will use it to peer into the thoughts and the minds and the understandings, or I should say the cultural understanding of how Shabbat worked in the New Testament era, okay, in the first century AD. Let's do that, and let's start with the book of Mark, and we're going to go to Mark 16 and 1. And I want you to notice something here. I want you to notice It reads, and when the Shabbat, so we're talking about the Shabbat. So, hey, this is exactly what we want. This is exactly what we want to see. Notice what it reads in Mark 16:1, which is the last chapter of Mark, which was supposedly the earliest of the Synoptic Gospels that were written. So, when the Shabbat was passed, what? When the Shabbat was passed, Mary from Magdala and Mary, the mother of James and Salome, had bought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him, Yeshua ben Yosef. And very early in the morning, record scratch, hold on. And very early in the morning, the first day of the week, they came unto the sepulchre at the rising of the sun. Wait a minute, let's unpack it, okay? And when Shabbat was passed, Mary from Magdala and Mary the mother of James and Salome, what did they do? I want to highlight it because it is important enough to understand. When Shabbat was over, they went to the market. And when they went to the market, they bought sweet spices, right? And then after they bought sweet spices, what happened? Early in the morning, okay? Early in the morning, they came to the tomb. What does this say? This says that Shabbat then, basically, it ended at the evening. They went to, as the sun went down, they then went to the market. And when they went to the market, they bought sweet spices and they prepared them so that they might anoint the body, right? And so they went because they were going to go early in the morning. So they were preparing to anoint Yeshua ben Yosef early in the morning by going to the market and getting spices as soon as Shabbat was over. Now, if Shabbat was over when the sun rose, right? If Shabbat was over when the sun rose, they would not have been able to get to the tomb or the sepulcher early in the morning because they would have been in the market. Because then after the market, they have to go and prepare the spices. They didn't just take stuff out of the packs and spread them around, right? They didn't burst open the plastic bags and say, hey, let's go ahead and just spread this around. No, these things had to be prepared. And as they were prepared, it took time. And so they used the time that they had from when the sun went down, they went to the market, they came back home. From that time up until the time of early morning, also included with them getting rest, they then prepared the spices to anoint the body of Yeshua ben Yosef. Okay? Now, this is also borne out and it's understood when we look at John 20:1. The first day of the week comes Mary of Magdala early when it was yet dark. What? When it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and sees the stone rolled away from the sepulchre or the tomb. Now wait a minute. Here is another observation that we have to deal with. If Shabbat ended at the rising of the sun, okay? And if the next day started with the rising of the sun, then there's no way that she could have been there early before the sun had arisen and while it was dark. There was no way that she could have done that if that was the case and if they thought that way. Okay? I need you to see that again. John 20:1. The first day of the week comes Mary Magdalene early, right? When it was yet dark. This says then that the first day of the week began at some point in time when it was yet dark. And from the scriptures, from the Tanakh, we know that to be from even unto even. Okay? From evening to evening. So let's continue because we have another scripture to look at. Let's look at Matthew 28. Okay? Let's look at Matthew 28. In the end of the Shabbat. In the end of Shabbat. As it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. Now, this styles are just a little bit different, but this says that in the end of the Shabbat. Okay? Time continues, and it began to dawn towards the first day. So, with the end of Shabbat, notice it's dawning toward the what? Towards the first day. Now, many people say, see, you know what? See, that says day. So, if that says day, then that means that the day would start as the sun rose, because the sun, it was dawning. Wait a minute. You have to understand, again, there is a difference, or there is a separation that our Elohim has placed between the night and the day. With there being a separation between the night and the day, they are forever separated because our Elohim separated them. So you could talk about a 24-hour period, and you can either reference a day as being a 24-hour period, or you could say, you could look at the night portion of it, or you could look at the day or the daylight portion of it. The way that we talk in English, the way that we speak in our modern vernacular, when we say a day, we mean for it to be inclusive of whatever evening and darkness, as well as the light hours, and we're really referencing a 24-hour day. That's what we're doing. We are referencing a 24-hour day. Okay? But if you notice here in the scripture that we just read, long story short, we are dealing with the fact that now we're getting into the daylight and not just the reference of a day. And this is where I think a lot of the confusion comes in. This is where I think a lot of confusion comes in, because individuals will reference the daylight thinking that the daylight automatically means the 24-hour day, when really it is talking about the daylight. Okay? So in the end of the Shabbat, as it began to dawn towards the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. Now, as we've already read, we understood, even in John 20, what happened. And even though the construction is different and the English is being portrayed just a little bit different, we know exactly what happened because it's right here in John 20. The first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came early, when it was yet dark. And so this is what is being communicated in Matthew 28. In the end of the Shabbat, which would have ended in the evening, as it began to dawn, okay, and so now we get into dawn. As it began to dawn, right, Mary came, and of course we understand again through John 20 that she came when it was dark, right? She came when it was dark. So what we're looking at here then is we're looking at the concept of the day being from even unto even, as opposed to from morning unto morning. Now, there is a huge difference, and when you look at whether or not this is true, whether or not it's evening, or whether or not it's morning to morning, what you're looking at is this, because biblically, from Genesis, what we've already read is that one day, which we're going to reference as a 24-hour period, begins with the evening, okay? And it ends with the day going into the next evening. So really what we have here, we have a template for the Shabbat that either is going to be a 24-hour period that begins at evening and ends at evening, right? Or you can look at a day as starting with the sun rising and then ending with the darkness, okay? Which would then take Shabbat into, again, a completely different motif, right? So then in looking at that, let's take a look then and understand that when we talk about Shabbat, we're really talking about a 24-hour period, right? We're talking about a 24-hour period. But within that 24-hour period, we've got two sections, two basic sections that have been given to us by Genesis, by Bereshit, the first chapter. You have the night, okay? But you also have the Shabbat day, which again, whenever you say day proper, it really scripturally, it really does refer to the Sabbath day or the Sabbath daylight. Think of day as being short for daylight, okay? And out of the daylight of Shabbat, you have the Shabbaton. What is the Shabbaton? The Shabbaton is when there is no working, okay? You stay home, you meditate, pray, and study, right? Or you have home fellowship. Or you do all of the above. But that happens during the Shabbaton, or the Sabbath day. The Sabbath day is what is holy. Remember, now listen, all of Shabbat is meaningful and holy, don't get me wrong. But the Shabbaton is when you do the special tasks within that Shabbat day. For the regular weekly Shabbat, the Shabbaton is no working, stay home, meditate, pray, study, and fellowship. Okay? Fellowship. If someone is in walking distance from your place, from your home, they can come by and you can fellowship together. Okay? Some suggest that no, you spend the night and then and then you actually share their Shabbat with them. Okay? There's different opinions on that. However, the Shabbaton is when you do the special tasks of that particular Shabbat. There are some Sabbath celebrations or feast, if you will, where the Shabbaton itself may be not eating leavened bread. Okay, whatever the special task is, that is a part of the Shabbaton. For the regular, again, I'll say it again, for the regular Shabbat, for the regular weekly Shabbat, the Shabbaton is the ceasing from work, staying home, meditating, praying, studying, and of course having fellowship at home. Okay? Now, with that understanding that there is a nighttime to the Shabbat day, or an evening to the Shabbat day, and then there's the actual Shabbat day called the Shabbaton. All of it is Shabbat, but the daylight is Shabbaton. Okay? You understand that there are two segments to the day. Now, with that being true and there being two segments to the day, it's important to realize then that there's a difference between the two. Because, listen, again, let me point this out. There will always be a difference between the light and the day. It is a division that our Elohim has established, and it will forever be established as a separation between the two. Okay? Which means different things happen in those different segments of time. Let's dig into it, and let's get into it with the scripture now. As we dig into these scriptures, I do want you to take some notes, and I want you to see something here. Okay, because really what we're dealing with is we're dealing with Shabbat, and we are dealing with how things flowed in the minds of the ancients, okay, concerning Shabbat. So let's dig in. Now let's go to Nehemiah 13 and 19. Nehemiah 13 and 19, okay? And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark, before the Shabbat, okay? It wasn't dark, but it began to be dark, okay? Nehemiah says, I commanded that the gates should be shut and charged that they should not open till after Shabbat. And some of my servants set I at the gates, that there should no burden be brought in on Shabbat day. Notice, on Shabbat day. All right? And then, of course, he has to deal with the merchants, and I love what he says here. He says, look, if you guys keep this up, I'm going to lay hands on you, right? I'm going to lay some hands on you, and you ain't going to like it. But let's continue here, because as we continue to look at this, we find that Nehemiah has to deal with those who are, basically, they are somewhat confused when it comes to Shabbat. And they were being influenced by others to sell, to do things. In other words, just business as usual, even though it's Shabbat. And Nehemiah was not going to have that. So he had the gates closed. When did he have the gates closed? He had them closed as it began to get dark. Okay? As it began to get dark, that is when he had the building, or I should say the gates, closed. Now, what I want to do here is the reason, let me just explain this, because the reason why there is somewhat of a controversy is because you can look at the text of the Tanakh and listen, as far as this subject is concerned, you need to understand something very simple. There is pre-exilic text and there is post-exilic text. What does that mean? That means that there is text written that were basically, it was written before Israel ever went into Babylon. Okay? And there are texts that were written after Israel went to Babylon, did their time, and they came out. So wait a minute. In the time that they were in Babylon, there were Babylonian influences, okay, such as the square script that came out of Babylon that we are now familiar with, okay? But basically it came out of Babylon, and so Paleo-Hebrew ceased to be used, and Ezra, one of the major redactors of the Hebrew Bible, of the Tanakh, instituted the square script. In fact, he was so notable and so famous, if you will, that he was said to be like Moses Jr., if you'll allow me to just coin it that way. He was said to be Moses Jr. In other words, that if anyone could deal with the Tanakh and Torah and so forth and so on, it is, other than Moshe, it is only Ezra that could do that. So then Ezra then had a great reputation, and he had great knowledge concerning the Tanakh. And so Ezra then redacted, and there are some anachronisms within the Hebrew text. For those of you that don't know what an anachronism is, that's a big fancy word, $25 word, that simply means that, for instance, if we were to talk about your state and your city that you live in, we would use the name of the state and the city that we now understand it to be, and not what the indigenous Americans called it back in the day, okay? To call it by its modern name, to call it, to give it a modern reference, is an anachronism. It's not accurate when you consider ancient history or history proper, but it is basically for the sake of understanding and for people to understand the region that you're talking about, right? But that being the case, Ezra redacted the Hebrew Bible, and in him doing so, there are things that we can see that happen in the redaction process. Okay, so now let me do this. I'm going to give you an example here. I'm going to give you an example of what we're dealing with when we talk about redaction and about evening and morning when it comes to Shabbat. Okay, I believe I need to go to one of the scriptures we're going to go to is 1 Kings 8 and 29. Okay, 8 and 29. 8 and 29. Okay, and then the second one we're going to go to is 2 Chronicles 6 and 20. Let's go there. 2 Chronicles 6 and 20. I think I want that in English. Okay. 2 Chronicles 6 and 20. Okay. Now, if you notice, these two are the same scriptures. Now, the difference between these two, and let me let you look at it close up. The difference between these two is that they are communicating the same thing, okay? But one is doing it pre-exilic, and the other one is relaying the same information from a post-exilic motif. What does that mean? That means that before Israel went into Babylon, this is what was penned, this is what was written here on your left, this is what was understood. On the right, this is, again, the same message that's being relayed and communicated, but through a post-exilic motif, meaning with the influence of Babylon. And I want you to notice the difference between the two. Let's start over here at your left. That thine eyes may be open. Okay, look at the right. That thine eyes may be open. Okay, upon the house. Over here to the left. That they may be open upon this house. Okay, again, same thing here. Upon this house. I missed that before. But now notice the next clause. Day and night. Day and night. Upon the place whereof thou hast said. Upon the place whereof thou hast just said. Now, the reason why these are the same is because, and it's actually kind of funny, I copied both verses in the same, on the same side. Wait, hold on. Wait, hold on. Hold still. Wait, hold on. Ah, there we go. So here, the pre-exilic says this: towards this house, night and day. The post-exilic, or after the Babylonian influence, says, upon this house, day and night. Not night and day, but day and night. Now notice, what has just happened here is that in the pre-exilic text, night is put before the day. In the post-exilic text of 2 Chronicles, which is why it's at the end of the Hebrew Bible, because it was written much later, it is day and night. So notice, day comes before night when it comes to the post-exilic text, and in the pre-exilic text, night comes before the day. All right? Give me just a second here. I'm just checking to see if we have any. And there is one thing I need to do. Give me a second here. I need to make our Facebook feed public so that more people will be able to join us and more people will be able to hop in here, okay? So let's go ahead and do this. Give me just a second. All right. Okay, I made that public. Good. Okay. So now, here we go back into things, right? So then please understand that the pre-exilic shows us that night came before the day. Now, the influence for the night coming before the day comes from Bereshit, the first chapter, as we've already seen and as we've already read. in Genesis 1, okay, where it reads that the evening and the morning were the first day, okay? The evening of the darkness came before the morning, and so in the pre-exilic text, this is the understanding that is given, that the night comes first. The nighttime comes first, okay? So this is kind of what we're looking at when we deal with the pre-exilic versus post-exilic text that gives you these different influences. Now, part of the issue here is that when you take a look at the writings of Bereshit, and you take a look at the writings of, and even just the understanding. Listen, I understand that there's a lot of teaching that's been going on. There's been a lot of individuals saying a number of different things, okay? And long story short, you know, there are people teaching, I want to say that one of the things that they're teaching, I believe, is something that comes from Babylonian influence, and that is that Shabbat begins at daybreak. Now, again, as I stated to you, there is a difference between Shabbaton and Shabbat proper, okay? And I believe that where the confusion comes in is that, again, the Shabbaton is the special task that you do that has been prescribed within that particular Shabbat. So I don't care if you say that Shabbat begins with the sun rising, or if you say that it begins in the evening, in the Gregorian calendar, and what we would consider to be the previous day. I don't care which one of those you take. When the sun rises on the Sabbath day, and remember, you have to use day as being short for daylight because of the separation between day and night. You are immediately on Sabbath day, you are in Shabbaton. You are in the Shabbaton, which means that you are in the prescribed tasks or prohibitions for that particular Sabbath day. Okay, no pun intended. So that being the case then, right, you have to look at the Sabbath, keeping it holy and doing no work. That goes towards Sabbath day. Now, which means the daylight of Sabbath, the daylight of Shabbat, is of major importance, and you are to do no work. I don't care if you say that Shabbat began the evening before, or if Shabbat began as the sun rose on that particular day. You do nothing during the day on Shabbat. That is what is very important. In fact, I dare say most important. Now, where we get into controversy is where we begin to wonder whether or not the rest of the day, whether it be evening before or whether it be evening following the day, the question is whether or not the evening section of Shabbat is going to go before, okay, or whether it's going to follow, and whether or not you can do things within that particular period of time. Okay. Let's do this. I want to go to a scripture, and I want to go to Numbers, the 11th chapter. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to just scroll down, because I want you to see something here. I want you to see as I continue. Okay, here we go. And I've gone just a little bit too far. Okay. Numbers. In fact, there's another scripture I want to go to too. Let me hurry up here. Let me hurry up, because I want to go to the book of Exodus. I believe Exodus 16 as well. Give me just a second here. All right, let me do something. Excuse me. right, so let's do this first. I want to go here first. Exodus, I told you Exodus 16, right? Okay, Exodus 16. We're going to go here first. Oh, you can't see it. Let me let you see the scriptures here, right? That's too far away. And Yahuwah spake unto Moshe, saying, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. I heard them talking. I heard it. Speak unto them, saying, at even, what? At even, what? Tell them at even, and you'll find out that as you look at the Tanakh, that the evening is very significant. If you are unclean and you've touched a dead body, you touched an unclean emission, at even you become clean again. Okay? Why? Because his mercies are renewed every day. His mercies are renewed day by day. And of course, that being the beginning of the day, yes, at even then you become clean again. But notice what he says. Speak unto them, saying, at even ye shall eat flesh, and in the morning ye shall be filled with bread. And ye shall know that I am Yahuwah your Elohim. And came to pass that at even the quails, yes, at even the quails, they came. And they covered the camp, and in the morning, the dew lay around about the host. And when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as hoarfrost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, what did they say? They said, Lord, have mercy. They said, hey, this is manna. For they didn't know what it was, they didn't know where it came from, but this was the bread that Moshe had promised them that they were going to eat in the morning. So, notice what it reads in verse number 16. This is the thing which the Lord commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man, according to the number of your persons. Okay, and basically you're to gather it, right? And Moshe said, let no man leave it until the morning. But some of them did leave it until the morning, and of course it did smell, and there were worms in it. And he said unto them, this is that, verse 23, this is that which the Lord hath said, on tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath. Okay, you see that? It is the rest of the holy Shabbat. And notice what we have highlighted is it is the Shabbaton. It is the Shabbaton, Shabbat Kodesh. It is the Shabbaton of the Holy Sabbath. Okay? That is exactly what it is. It is the Shabbaton. So notice, if you will, tomorrow is the rest of the Holy Sabbath. It is the Shabbaton. Okay, unto the Lord. Bake that you're going to bake today, right? Boil what you're going to boil today. And that which remaineth over, basically, what remains over, lay it up for you to be kept until the morning. So, they laid it up until the morning, as Moses said, and it didn't stink. There were not any worms in it. Now, I want you to notice something here. Let's take a look at verse number 26. In fact, let me give you 25 too. And Moshe said, eat that today, for today is a Shabbat unto Yahweh. Today ye shall not find it in the field. 6 days ye shall gather it. But on the seventh day, which is the Shabbat, in it there shall be none. Okay? In it there shall be none. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the seventh day for to gather, and they found none. So notice there was a stipulation against them gathering the manna in the morning. Why? Because it was in the day, the Sabbath daylight, which was the Shabbaton of the Shabbat. Because it was the Shabbaton, or the holy rest season of Shabbat, they were told, don't go out to the field. Don't go out to the field. Don't do it. Right? And within this passage, we also get, in fact, let me just look at this a little bit further with you, because out of this, we also see where our Elohim tells them to abide in their homes. Look at verse number 29. See, for that Yahweh have given you the Shabbat, therefore he giveth you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. Day, remember, daylight, 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day. Okay? And just let me do something real quick. Verse number 30. Okay, verse number 30. Did I pass it? Did I pass it? Okay. I just want to see something real quick. Good. And so they rested on the 7th day, and they were not to go anywhere or do anything. Okay. So now then let's take a look here. We're just about at the we're gonna do a comparison here, because I want you to understand, since I've said something about Shabbaton, I want you to understand that again, my personal conviction is that this is tied to, once again, the sentimentality of our Elohim. Again, we are to know his ways and not just what he does and his actions. So let's take a look at this, and let's go first of all to Genesis Bereshit 1 and 5, and then we're going to skip down to 2 and 2, because I want you to see something here, okay? 1 and 5. And our Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So you've got evening and morning, right? And this follows through from the first to the second to the third to the fourth, right? Also to the fifth, and also to the sixth. Now, notice, if you will, on the sixth day, of course, humanity is created. But then, as the 7th day rolls around, I want you to notice something here. Okay? Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. Okay? And on the 7th day, our Elohim ended his work, which he had made, and he rested. He rested on the 7th day. Okay? See that? He rested on the 7th day. Now, as he rested on the 7th day, he Shabbated on the 7th day. Okay? This is what this is saying. He Shabbated on the 7th day. Therefore, we are to Shabbat on the 7th day. But wait a minute, there's more here. There's more here. When you look at 2 and 2, as we are here, there's a clause in here that is really interesting, because it says, and on the 7th day. On the 7th day, he ended his work, which he had made, and he rested on the 7th day. The reason why that is significant, and the reason why that is important, in fact, let's even get into the Hebrew here. That as you take a look here, he had created the heavens and the earth, right? And in the 7th day, by Yom HaShavi'i, okay, in the 7th day, and it's talking about sequence, It says, Mila'akto asher asa. In other words, what that which he had done, right? And he Shabbated in that day, the seventh day, from all Mil'akto asher aseh, from basically from everything that he did. He stopped it. He ceased on the seventh day. Now, with what we now understand about the Shabbaton, we see here now, because listen, in this particular clause, it says that it was on the seventh day that he ended his work, which is suggestive of him keeping busy up until the time of the Shabbaton. When the Shabbaton happened, that is when he ceased from all of his labors. Okay? You will not find any quote-unquote nights within the Tanakh that are deemed to be holy. You will not find any nights that are holy, but you will rather find the daytime being holy. And so you have the Shabbaton on Sabbath day. All right, wanted to wet my whistle. We are just about done. But now let's take a look at an extensive passage of scripture here, and let's dig into it, okay? And this is Exodus 16. For the sake of time, I'm not gonna go back into Nehemiah for right now. I'm not gonna go back into 2 Kings right now. I want to just stick with the scriptures where we're at right here. We've got a couple more, and then of course we are going to skedaddle. Notice what it reads here. Exodus 16 and 11. It says, and we just basically just read this, right? Because this is him dealing with the bread and dealing with the quails that came. And one of the points that I wanted to make is that at evening, he says that you shall eat flesh. So at evening, they were allowed to collect the quail. They were allowed to collect the quail at the evening, and there was never a stipulation of them not collecting the quail in the evening. However, they were to keep the Shabbaton of Shabbat by doing absolutely nothing and staying inside on the Sabbath day. Let's go down here to 16:26, okay? And let's read from 26 to 30. 6 days shall ye gather it, but on the seventh day, which is the Shabbat, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the seventh day for to gather, and they found none, just as we read before. And our Elohim said unto Moshe, How long refuse ye to keep my commandment and my laws? Now, this is interesting because I always looked at this and I thought to myself, I kind of see the same thing here with Moshe and the people as we see with Dawid HaMelech and the people, where our Elohim looks at them as somehow being a unified whole, and what the people do collectively is attributed somehow, or I should say a reflection, if you will, of the leadership of the individual that's over them. Okay, which is why it's very important for us to follow our mores and follow the ways that we're taught, because it is a reflection on them. And I believe that while it is not sin that is going to be attributed to them, they will have to stand for you, because they're standing in intercession for you, okay, before our Elohim. Let's just continue. We're almost done. Almost done. And the Lord said unto Moses, verse number 28, How long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for the Lord hath given you the Sabbath. Therefore he giveth you on the sixth day the bread of 2 days. Abide every man, in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the seventh day. So the people rested on the seventh day. Verse number 31. And the house of Israel called the name thereof manna, and it was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. You kind of imagine how that tastes, right? So one of the things that I want to point out here, because we're just about done, is that when you look at what is happening with the question of there being evening and the question of does the day begin at morning, we're dealing with different influences. Okay, you're dealing with different influences, and with these different influences, you're talking about being either influenced from Babylon, or you're talking about being influenced from the text of the Torah that is pre-exilic, or that is, if I can say it this way, that is before the Babylonian influence. Okay, one of the verses there are many verses in the Tanakh that point to a specific and just point blank evening to evening worship, okay, or observance of Shabbat. This is Leviticus 23 and 32. It shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest. Okay, it shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest. And let me do this because I want to show you this. And here's the word again, okay? I just want to highlight that for you. A Shabbaton. Shabbaton hulakem. Unto you it is going to be a Sabbath of rest, where the Shabbaton is the kernel, if you will. It's the heart of the Shabbat. It shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest, and ye shall afflict your souls in the 9th day of the month. When? When is that going to happen? When is that going to happen? At even. And then he says, from even unto even shall you celebrate your Sabbath. Now, wait a minute. I'm closing. Just about done. I just want to bring this point out before I completely shut her down. Okay? You see this clause here, from even unto even shall you celebrate your Sabbath. Let's look at that in the Hebrew, okay? Okay? So it says here, notice what we're looking at here. It says be'arev, or in the evening, right? Me'arev, from evening to evening, right? And then it says here, ad, okay, from evening, ad erev, is literally from evening unto evening, right? Because he's giving them instructions up here about their Shabbat. But then he says here, from evening unto, ad erev, unto evening, okay? He says, tish vitu, which is the imperfect, okay? This is the imperfect third person, plural. Tishvitu, Shabbat Kem, your collective Sabbath. Okay? That kaf and that final mem at the end, that is for, it is actually like it is the second person plural. Second person masculine plural, okay, for a collective of individuals, as he's telling them that this is how you are going to. So in other words, this is what I want to say. This word here, Tishvitu, this deals with the future, because this is saying this is what you are going to do. Okay? This is what you are going to do for your collective Sabbath. Are you with me so far? So this then, and it is I posit here that this last clause that I've just highlighted in Hebrew, which equates to the English of From even unto even shall ye celebrate your Sabbath. I see this as being, number one, because it is in the imperfect, okay? You don't have the way yiktal here, or I should say the wa consecutive here. So it is not the imperfect that has a reverse tense. But this rather is the imperfect, which means the future, and it's talking about the future of their collective Sabbath. Everyone was to keep the Sabbath. Okay? And this, again, points to the future of that Sabbath that is said to be from even unto even. Now, I posit from that yes, every Shabbat is to be from evening unto evening, keeping in mind that the Shabbaton, which begins at daylight, is that part of the Sabbath where you do nothing. You go nowhere. You stay right at home and you worship, and you do, what you do to worship and to study and so forth and so on. Okay? I want to I don't know if we have any. You know what? Let me check to see if we have any questions or comments. Okay, my brother is here. Peace and blessings also. Appreciate my brother Bergen Paris. Thank you for being here, my brother. He says I'm late, y'all. But hey, that's okay. That's okay. Just seeing the notification an hour late, that's a-okay. But let us continue, because if there are no questions, what about working that's not by your choice? Thank you for that question. What about working that's not by your choice? Well, let me deal with that, because I've had to do some work, and I hated doing it. I really did. I hated doing it. And I understand how it is. I really do. I understand how it is completely. And I'm just going to tell you right now, there are two different schools of thought on this, okay? And I'm just going to say it depends on the individual. I got to go straight down the middle with this. And I got to say, while we are here in captivity, okay, we are not under the laws of the kingdom. And so I was under contract, and because I was under contract, I had to go in on Shabbat. Point blank. I had to go in on Shabbat, and there was no getting around it. If I could try to get someone to work for me, but 9 times out of 10, I'd never be able to get anyone to work for me. Okay? I will say this. In fact, there is a particular scripture that I will pull up that I feel addresses this, even though it may seem like it's a little bit of a stretch. And that's a scripture that I went to before. Now, I don't necessarily want to use this scripture as like a blanket for all. But let's do this. Let's do this here real quick. Because this addresses an exilic situation where you're in exile. You don't, basically things are outside of the norm. You got issues, okay? Let me begin. Once again, this is Psalm 44. Basically, David HaMelech is saying, you know what, we're in bad shape. We're in bad shape because we're going through all of this, okay? You've cut us off. We're in shame. We're turning our backs on our enemies. This is an exilic situation that we're talking about here. We're talking about being in exile. You make us to be a byword among the heathen. We have confusion continually. And I just want to point to this because I feel like that this is a very real question. It's a very real thing to address here. And I don't think that there's just one pat answer that's going to fit every single situation. So this is an exilic situation here in Psalms 44. And I gotta go here because I feel as if it applies if we have forgotten the name of our Elohim. Again, this is something that happens in exilic situations when you're in exile. Or if we stretched our hands to other gods, shall not God search it out? So our Elohim knows if we are just saying that we are in exile, but we're really wanting all the overtime we can get and working it on Shabbat. I mean, that's a violation of the law to keep it holy. Now, if it's not by your choice and you don't have a choice because basically the laws of the land allow you to work and your employer demands that you work, then that's just where you're at. Now, you could quit your job. I'm just saying, you could quit your job, right, and get a different job, but that's easier said than done. And 9 times out of 10, many of us just can't quit our jobs and say, man, forget this. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna, quit, and then I'm not gonna work on a Saturday again. I'm not gonna work on Shabbat again. Okay. You can do that, right? You can do that. If that's your choice, but you have to make that decision. I chose to continue to work under contract simply because I understood that I was in an exilic situation, and there are many things that we can and cannot do being here in exile. Okay? Do we follow the feasts? Well, I know. That's kind of controversial too, because some people say, since we're not in Israel, no, we don't follow the feast. No, we're not supposed to. Okay, and I get it. Okay. But there are many things that are not laws, I should say, they're laws of the land, but they are not laws that are according to Tanakh. And it is because of that that we deal with everyday realities in an exiled situation. Now, when we're in the kingdom, if you're in the kingdom and you worked, because listen, we have to understand something here. When you look at the scriptures that we have read in Exodus 16, also Numbers 11, when you look at these scriptures, Israel is separated as a nation, and they are able to follow the laws, statutes, and the commandments civilly and also religiously or spiritually. They're able to follow the laws. Okay, we as a nation of people, in fact, we're not even a nation of people, properly speaking. We are people that are yet and still under the rule of a foreign government. Okay, it is as if we are yet and still in Babylon. So I just have to be honest with you and say, until we are separated into our own place in the kingdom, then I do believe and feel that keeping the Shabbat, I mean, you're going to have to keep it the best way that you can. Now, once we're in the kingdom, once we're in the kingdom of our Elohim, there will be no excuse. There will be no excuse. But at this particular time, I cannot see where being in exile, we're expected to cross every T and dot every I. I just don't see how we can do that, because there's so many things that are not even available to us. There's so many things that are prohibited that we can't do that. Okay, that's just where I'm at with it. Excuse the long answer, but that's where I am at with that. Okay, and I want to say, just like our Elohim said to Abimelech, he said, I know the integrity of your heart. I know that it was not your intention to sin. Now, just a couple more things, and then I'm going to let this dog rest. You have to understand, and you have to remember that in Ezekiel, the 2nd chapter, those who were upset at sin, those who were disgruntled at the iniquity and the unrighteousness that was happening. Again, Israel was a nation. They were all to themselves. And so, yeah, things were different back then. But our Elohim paid attention to those who were begrudgingly tolerating these things. In fact, when you look at Lot is said to have been tolerating Sodom and Gomorrah. When you look at, I mean, I hope that that's true. When you look at, the individuals in Jerusalem in Ezekiel, the 2nd chapter, they were tolerating and they were hating the wickedness around them. Our Elohim took note of that. And so a mark was placed on them based upon their inward disposition of whether they were upset with it or whether they were just going along with it and they were fine and didn't have a problem with it. I would say make sure that your emotions and your heart is always in check, that you hate breaking the law and that you hate having to work on Shabbat, and make sure that your heart remains right before our Elohim, even if you do have to work. Okay? Make sure that you're of the right mindset, whether you're cussing under your breath or you're like, man, I hate being in this exile. I hate, being under this form of rule because I want to follow the laws of our Elohim. Make sure that your heart is in the right place. Okay? That is what is most important. And with Ezekiel, the 2nd chapter, 2nd and 3rd chapter, also Psalm 44, I say, right now, we have to do what we have to do in this exile type situation. But keep your heart right, keep your mind right, and follow this law, statutes, and commandments to the best of your ability. Okay? Keep in mind that when it said that Elizabeth and Zechariah were blameless in the law, again, they were living in a culture and amongst a people who had laws that were tailored for living the law. Okay? We're in the exact opposite. So our Elohim is with us, and so we know that he is watching over us, and he is helping us every step of the way. I'm going to see if there's any more questions. Okay. Speaking of feast days, did you ever get to observe Pesach? Okay, I did not a full version of Pesach because a couple of things. I am my present conviction and my present research is this, that we have to go by the seasons and the timings and the calendar of Yerushalayim, of Jerusalem, okay, and not where we're at. Definitely not using the Greco-Roman calendar, the Julian calendar, but considering Jerusalem, okay. And I am, like I said, I still wanted to observe a little bit, right? But yet and still, I am looking forward to, again, I just don't want to say, oh, we're in exile. But we are in exile. We are in exile, okay? And I know that our ancient forefathers, they did keep, now they didn't keep the Passover in the wilderness, okay? They didn't keep it in the wilderness. In fact, of course, Joshua had to recircumcise everyone and so forth and so on. Because we all know what happened there, right? However, if you read the scriptures, it says that when ye come into the land, and so I'm of the high five. I agree too, right? I'm of the mindset that if you want to observe it and if you want to honor it, okay, I mean that's fine. But when we get in the land, when we get over there, when we get in our own country again, then we will be able to. Okay, so for right now, it's not mandatory. Let me say it that way. If we do it because we desire to do so, right? But it is not mandatory. And if we do it, it is practice for what is going to come, but it is not mandatory in the sense that it's just like you're in the land, it's just like you're not in exile, it's just like, no. We can't pretend like we're not in exile, okay? We can't do it. With everything that's happening around us right now, I mean, are you kidding? No, we cannot pretend that we are in exile. So, all right. I think that we are good. I think that we are good unless there is another question. I guess someone asked in Twitch whether or not that some kid. Yeah, I don't have time to acknowledge ignorant questions. All right. I guess we are good. Well, peace and blessings to each and every one. Those of you that will see this, we thank you for tuning in. We, of course, abide by the laws, statutes, and the commandments of the Most High. We honor and teach the Tanakh, which is the Torah, which is the first 5 books of Moshe, as well as the Nevi'im, which is the prophets, and the Ketuvim, which is the Psalms, and of course the other writings that are not in the classification of the Torah and the Nevi'im. We appreciate your being here. Pray that you've gotten something out of this, that you've learned that the light of our Elohim has shined upon you, and that you have grown even in the midst of this conversation and discussion where we opened up the word of our Elohim with you. That being the case, that we have completed, we finished. If there are any questions, I want to say, please feel free to contact us through the websites that we have. You can go to malkiauriel.live. You can go to Remnant Nation Live, and you can ask us a question. You can even type something while we're here. You can even type something in the chat. I will take a look at it, and we will definitely try to answer that for you. So, Yah willing, we will be back. We will be back once again to teach another lesson. I've enjoyed this time, and I'm honored to share with you the word of our Elohim, the word of truth that we stand and that we live by. He is our all in all. He is the only one true. There is no other Elohim beside him. There is no Elohim but him. And so we honor and we worship and we serve him alone, and not the Greco-Roman impostor. We serve our Elohim, who will not share his glory with another. So, peace and blessings to you, my brothers and my sisters. We look forward to teaching you once again very soon, perhaps tomorrow or the next day. But hey, we look forward to teaching you very soon. I'm Malki Uriel, and thank you for taking this time, and peace and blessings to you. We say to you, Shalom.